The galaxy had seen countless wars. Empires rose and fell. Planets burned, civilizations crumbled, and no one questioned the will of the strong. Among them, the Zorkan Dominion ruled with an iron fist. They were brutal, ruthless, and feared. For centuries, they had conquered worlds without resistance. Every species that defied them had been crushed. And to remind the galaxy of their power, they had a tradition, the broadcast. Whenever the Zorkan conquered a new world, they publicly executed its leaders. The event was recorded and transmitted across the galaxy, a warning to all who watched. Submit or suffer. For the Zorkan, it was just another display of dominance. For the billions of species watching, it was a reminder of their hopelessness. But this time, something went wrong. This time, the broadcast reached Earth. The broadcast begins. The Zorkan High Commander, Varax the Unyielding, stood tall on the ruined capital of Velenfor. The Vellani people had fought bravely but failed, like all before them. Their leaders were on their knees, broken and defeated. A massive holographic projection was activated, sending the live transmission to thousands of star systems. Every world under Zorkan rule would witness their fate. "Let this be a lesson to all," Varax announced, his deep voice cold and merciless. "No one defies the Zorkan and survives." The executioner stepped forward. The Vellani leaders bowed their heads, knowing there was no escape. The energy blades ignited, casting a cruel glow in the darkened city. And then, it happened. On a small blue planet, hidden on the edge of an unexplored arm of the galaxy, millions of screens flickered to life. The transmission hijacked Earth's networks, news stations, social media, government feeds, even personal devices. The world stopped. People in homes, offices, streets, and military bases stared in shock. At first, they thought it was a movie, a strange piece of science fiction. But as the pleas of the Vellani filled the speakers and the cold eyes of the Zorkan soldiers burned into the cameras, reality set in. This was real. This was happening. And the execution began. Earth watches in horror. Across the planet, rage boiled. In a military base in the United States, General Ethan Carter clenched his fists, his jaw tightening as he watched the brutal slaughter. In Beijing, a room full of intelligence officers stared at their screens in stunned silence. In Moscow, a group of scientists exchanged nervous glances. Across continents, leaders, soldiers, engineers, and civilians all had the same thought. Who are these monsters? And then, another thought followed, burning like fire in the hearts of every human watching. They need to be stopped. The Zorkan had made a terrible mistake. They believed Earth was primitive, weak, unworthy of notice. They thought no one would challenge them. They were wrong. The first secret meeting. Hours after the broadcast, a secret meeting was held in an underground facility beneath Geneva. The world's most powerful leaders, military strategists, and scientists gathered in one room. A massive screen showed the Zorkan fleet, their weapons, their technology, their army. Data was being analyzed, theories being formed. "This is beyond anything we faced before," a scientist murmured. "We have no choice," General Carter said. "If we ignore this, we'll be next." The United Earth Defense Council was formed that night. Every nation, every government, every military force united under one mission. Prepare for war. Earth was no longer just a silent observer in the galaxy. Humanity had made its decision. They would fight. And the Zorkan would never see it coming. Final scene. The escapee. Far from Earth, in the wreckage of Velenfor, a small ship slipped through the chaos. A Vellani survivor, wounded but determined, had stolen a Zorkan vessel. His name was Kalen, and he carried something powerful. A message. A warning. As he activated the ship's stealth drive and set his course for Earth, he muttered under his breath, "If anyone can stop them, It's the humans. The Zorkan Dominion had ruled the galaxy for centuries, crushing any resistance before it could begin. They believed no species could ever challenge them. But now, a new force had entered the game. A force they had overlooked. A force that had just seen their broadcast. And that force was humanity. The Council's decision, deep beneath Geneva, inside the most secure military bunker on Earth, the United Earth Defense Council, UEDC, sat in silence. Leaders from every major nation, military generals, top scientists, and intelligence officers had gathered for one purpose: to decide humanity's fate. A massive screen flickered in front of them, displaying the horrifying footage of the Villani execution. The room was filled with grim faces. "We don't have a choice," General Ethan Carter finally said, breaking the silence. "They will come for us. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day. And if we wait, we die," the Russian admiral added. The president of the European Union leaned forward. "How much time do we have?" A scientist, pale and visibly shaken, adjusted his glasses. "Based on the data from the broadcast, the Zorkan are at least 40 light-years away. If they decide to investigate, it could take months, maybe a year." "Then we prepare," said the Chinese general. His voice was cold and determined. "We strike first." For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth united under one cause. They weren't fighting each other anymore. They were fighting for survival. The first encounter. What no one knew was that the Zorkan were already watching. On the edges of the solar system, a small Zorkan scouting vessel had detected something strange. An unknown data signal coming from a primitive planet. A planet they had ignored for centuries. The ship's commander, Kreshtal, was a lower-ranking officer, but he saw an opportunity. If he brought useful intelligence to the Zorkan High Command, he might earn a promotion. He decided to investigate. As the scout ship slipped into the outer reaches of the solar system, its cloaking field activated, making it nearly invisible. The Zorkan believed no one could detect them. They were wrong. Earth's secret weapon. What the Zorkan didn't know was that Earth had been preparing for decades. While the world's leaders had kept it secret from the public, deep space monitoring stations had already been tracking unidentified objects for years. There had been sightings, unexplained signals, and whispers of something watching from the stars. Now, with war on the horizon, Earth's greatest minds worked together like never before. Military engineers, scientists, and strategists rushed to develop weapons, using hidden technology recovered from past UFO crashes and secret experiments. And their first success was Project Aegis, a deep space sensor network that could detect even the most advanced cloaked ships. When the Zorkan scout entered the solar system, Earth saw them instantly. But the Zorkan had no idea. They still thought they were invisible. The ambush. The moment Earth's military detected the Zorkan scout, the UEDC knew they had to act. "We can't let them report back," General Carter said. "If they do, we lose the element of surprise." "What are you suggesting?" the U.S. president asked. Carter's face was stone cold. "We take them out." For the first time in history, Earth launched an attack on an alien force. A team of elite Special Forces astronauts, trained in zero-gravity combat, boarded the U.S. Phantom, a prototype stealth ship designed for silent operations. Their mission was clear: destroy the Zorkan scout before it escapes. The Phantom slipped through space like a shadow, undetectable by conventional sensors. The Zorkan ship had no idea it was being hunted. As it drifted past Neptune, analyzing Earth's transmissions, the attack began. First blood. The Phantom moved in at high speed, locking onto the enemy ship. "Targets acquired," whispered Captain Daniel Rice, leader of the strike team. His voice was calm, controlled. "Fire." A burst of kinetic railgun rounds tore through the void, ripping into the Zorkan hull before they even realized what was happening. Inside the enemy ship, Alarms screamed. Creshtoll barely had time to react before the first explosion sent his crew flying. "White Tate A's hey pping," he roared. The Zorcan had never seen this kind of precision attack. They scrambled to respond, activating shields. Too late. The Phantom's second barrage pierced the reactor core, and the Zorcan scout ship detonated in a silent fireball, sending debris spinning into the darkness. It was over in seconds. For the first time in history, humanity had won its first battle in space. The Phantom disappeared into the void, leaving nothing behind. The Zorcan wouldn't even know who had attacked them. Aftermath. The message is sent. Back on Earth, as the UEDC received confirmation of their first victory, a quiet realization spread through the room. "We just declared war," one official whispered. General Carter's expression was unreadable. No, they declared war the moment they'd broadcasted that execution. We just answered. But deep in the galaxy, the Zorcan would soon realize something was wrong. Their scout ship was missing. And when they found out why, they would tremble. The Zorcan Dominion had crushed civilizations for centuries. They had burned planets, enslaved billions, and rewritten history to make themselves the undisputed rulers of the galaxy. Never, in all their conquests, had a species attacked first. Never had a species destroyed a Zorcan ship without being detected. But now one of their scouts was missing. And the Dominion demanded answers. The High Council gathers. On Zorvok Prime, the capital of the Zorcan Dominion, Supreme Warlord Salvoran sat on his throne, his piercing red eyes scanning the reports in front of him. Around him, the High Council, the most powerful Zorcan warlords, stood in silence. The report was short and disturbing. A scout ship had gone to investigate an unknown transmission. It was expected to return within 2 cycles. It never did. The data logs stopped abruptly. No distress signals, no last transmissions, no wreckage, nothing. As if the ship had simply vanished. Unacceptable. Salvoran growled, his claws tightening against his throne. "Who dares attack the Zorcan?" "We do not know, Supreme Warlord," one of the advisors admitted. The ship was scouting an unexplored sector. There was a planet. Zalvoran's eyes narrowed. What planet? A screen flickered to life, displaying a small blue world orbiting a yellow sun. Designation: Earth. The warlord frowned. He had seen this planet before. It was nothing. Barely worth noting in the great Zorcan archives. A primitive world. Another warlord scoffed. It doesn't even have interstellar travel. Then how did one of our ships disappear? Zalvoran's voice was dangerously low. Silence. No one had an answer. Then a new transmission arrived. A distress signal. Weak, damaged, but still intact. The High Council leaned forward as it played. The image was shaky. Static filled the screen. But the voice of Commander Creshtoll could still be heard. "We are under attack. Unknown force. Highly precise. Our cloaking has failed. They see US." The transmission cut off. For the first time, in hundreds of years, a chill passed through the Zorcan High Council. Whoever these humans were, they were dangerous. Earth's plan moves forward. Back on Earth, inside the UEDC war room, a massive holographic map displayed the known positions of Zorcan forces across the galaxy. Military leaders, scientists, and intelligence officers worked around the clock. General Carter stood at the center. "We hit them once," he said. "They'll be looking for answers. We can't let them find us unprepared." "We need more time," a scientist insisted. "Our weapons are advancing, but if they send a full invasion fleet—" "They won't," Carter interrupted. "How can you be sure?" Carter's expression was grim. "Because first, they'll try to scare us." And he was right. The warning. Days later, the sky above Earth changed forever. Hundreds of satellites, television screens, and communication networks were hijacked. A massive figure appeared, a towering Zorcan warrior, clad in black armor, his glowing red eyes filled with contempt. It was High Lord Vargol, a warlord of the Dominion. His voice echoed across the planet. "You have made a grave mistake, humans. You are insects, unworthy of our notice, yet you have dared to strike at the Zorkan. Surrender now. Submit to the Dominion, or your world will burn." The message repeated in every language, a warning for all of humanity to hear. Billions of people held their breath. Fear gripped the world. This was not a movie. This was real. Then something unexpected happened. The warning was cut off. Hacked. Hijacked by Earth's Cyber Warfare Division. Now, a new image filled the screens. General Carter stood tall, his eyes fierce and unyielding. His words shook the planet. "We have seen your so-called Dominion. We have seen your cruelty, your arrogance. You think we are weak. You think we are afraid. But know this, humanity does not bow. Humanity does not surrender. You want a war? Then come and find out what happens when you anger the species that never stops fighting." The message ended, and across the galaxy, the Zorkan finally felt something new. For the first time in centuries, they felt uncertain. For the first time in their history, they felt fear. Final scene. The fleet moves. Deep in Zorkan space, an armada began to gather. Massive warships, each capable of obliterating entire worlds, prepared for deployment. The Skull Fleet, a force that had never been defeated, was mobilizing. At the head of the armada, High Lord Vargol sharpened his blade, his red eyes burning with fury. "Fine," he growled. "Let's see what these humans are made of." The Zorkan Skull Fleet had never lost a war. They had burned thousands of planets, crushed every species that stood against them, and ruled the galaxy with absolute power. Now, for the first time, they were mobilizing against a species that had dared to strike first. A species they had ignored for centuries. A species that wasn't afraid. And that terrified them. Earth's final warning. As the Zorkan fleet approached the Sol system, the leaders of Earth gathered for one final decision. In the UEDC war room, General Carter stood before a massive holographic display, his eyes locked on the incoming Skull Fleet. "They outnumber us," an officer muttered. 1,000 to 1. "They outgun us," another added. "Every single ship in that fleet is capable of planetary destruction." General Carter's expression was cold, unreadable. "Then we don't fight them head-on." A scientist looked up. "What's the plan, sir?" Carter's voice was steel. "We trap them. The ambush at Saturn." As the Skull Fleet entered the outer edges of the solar system, they found nothing. No ships, no defenses, only the silent, empty void of space. High Lord Vargol, standing on the bridge of the Doombringer, sneered. "Pathetic," he growled. "They've already fled." He turned to his second-in-command. "Send the fleet forward. Find their homeworld. Burn it." The massive fleet pushed deeper into the system. But as they passed Saturn's rings, something changed. Their sensors flickered. Communication scrambled. And then, the trap was sprung. Humanity strikes first. From the shadows of Saturn's rings, hundreds of stealth warships emerged. They weren't massive battle cruisers. They weren't designed for direct confrontation. They were Earth's first-generation space combat vessels, built for one purpose: hit and run. The Zorkan barely had time to react before the first railgun barrage ripped through their formation. Explosions erupted as dozens of Zorkan ships were torn apart in seconds. The human fleet moved like ghosts, appearing, striking, and vanishing into the debris field. "They're using the asteroid belt as cover." A Zorkan officer roared. "We can't lock onto them." Vargol's fury burned. "Insolent insects. Fire EV thing." The Zorkan fleet unleashed hell, blasting the asteroid field with plasma cannons and energy weapons. But the humans were already gone. And then, Phase 2 began. The orbital drop. As the space battle raged, Earth's most elite soldiers prepared for their mission. The Zorcan had deployed a command station on Titan, one of Saturn's moons, a critical hub coordinating the invasion fleet. Destroy it, and the Zorcan forces would be blind and vulnerable. Inside drop pods, hundreds of orbital shock troopers braced themselves. Their commander, Captain James Cole, spoke through the comms. "This is it," he said. "They think they own the galaxy. They think we're weak. Let's remind them who we are." The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Drop. From Earth's hidden warships, hundreds of pods shot toward Titan's surface like meteors, slamming into the enemy base. The Zorcan barely had time to react before the humans stormed in. Gunfire erupted. Explosions shook the battlefield. And for the first time in history, the Zorcan were losing a ground battle. The turning point. High Lord Var Cole watched in horror as his fleet crumbled. They had expected a weak, defenseless species. Instead, they had walked into a perfectly executed ambush. "Impossible," he whispered. On Titan, the human forces breached the command center. Captain Cole planted the charge, setting the station to self-destruct. "Mission complete," he reported. "Get out of there," General Carter ordered. Minutes later, from orbit, the Zorcan command station exploded, sending a shockwave through the entire enemy fleet. With their coordination destroyed, the Skull fleet began to retreat. Humanity had won the first real battle. But this was only the beginning. The message is sent. As the remnants of the Zorcan fleet fled, Earth sent a message. A simple transmission. A single sentence. "We are humanity, and we do not fear you." And across the galaxy, as the Zorcan High Council received word of their first defeat, they realized something terrifying. Humanity wasn't prey. They were hunters. The Battle of Saturn had shaken the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the Zorcan Dominion had suffered a defeat. A primitive species had outmaneuvered them, outgunned them, and humiliated them. But the war was far from over. And now, humanity was no longer on the defensive. They were ready to strike back. The Zorcan's next move. Deep in the heart of the Dominion, the Zorcan High Council gathered in a war chamber shrouded in darkness. The supreme warlord Talvorin sat at the head of the table, his claws tapping against the metal. The tension in the room was unbearable. High Lord Vargol, still seething from his defeat, spoke first. "The humans are not weak," he admitted, the words bitter on his tongue. "They are dangerous." Silence. The council, once so confident, now struggled with a new reality. The humans had strategy. They had technology. They had firepower. And worst of all, they had defiance. "We must respond," another warlord snarled. "We cannot allow a lesser species to challenge us." Zalvorin narrowed his eyes. "We will crush them," he said coldly, "but not by brute force alone." He turned to a figure standing in the shadows. "Activate the infiltrators. Find Earth's weaknesses. And this time, we will strike where it hurts the most." Earth's next step. Operation Phantom Storm. Back on Earth, inside the UEDC war room, military leaders prepared their next move. The victory at Saturn had bought them time, but they knew the Zorcan would return, stronger, angrier, and prepared. General Carter stood at the center of the command table, surrounded by Earth's top strategists. "We can't wait for them to attack again," he said. "We have to hit them first." Admiral Reynolds, head of the UEDC Space Fleet, nodded. "We need a surgical strike, something that disrupts their entire war machine." Dr. Vasquez, one of Earth's top scientists, smiled knowingly. "I believe we have just the thing," she said, pulling up a holographic display. A massive Zorcan supply station appeared, a critical hub that fueled their war fleets. Carter studied the image. "If we take this out, their entire invasion fleet is crippled," Vasquez finished. Carter exhaled. It was risky, but if it worked, it would change the course of the war. He turned to his team. Prepare Operation Phantom Storm. The mission begins. Earth's stealth fleet, a collection of cutting-edge warships with cloaking technology, slipped into Zorkan space undetected. Their target, the Crucible, the largest and most secure Zorkan supply station in the sector. Leading the mission was Captain Sarah Hayes, commander of the UEDC Ghost Squadron, Earth's deadliest Black Ops team. Inside the briefing room of the U.S. Revenant, Hayes addressed her strike team. This station fuels the entire Zorkan war effort in this sector, she said. If we destroy it, they'll be scrambling for months. A soldier raised a brow. And how exactly do we do that? Hayes grinned. Simple. We blow it to hell. The attack on the Crucible. The UEDC fleet emerged from hyperspace right on top of the Crucible. Before the Zorkan could react, the attack began. Missiles ripped through docking bays. Railguns tore apart fuel reserves. Stealth teams infiltrated key systems, hacking defenses. The Zorkan tried to fight back, but they were too slow. The humans had already set the charges. From the bridge of the Revenant, Hayes gave the final order. Detonate. A massive shockwave tore through the station. Fire and debris exploded outward, ripping through nearby warships. The Crucible, the heart of the Zorkan supply chain, was gone. The Zorkan's rage. On Zorvok Prime, Supreme Warlord Salvoran watched the destruction unfold on a massive screen. His claws dug into the armrests of his throne, his fury burning like a supernova. Their audacity is beyond belief, one of his warlords growled. Zalvoran's voice was ice. They believe they are safe. They believe they are untouchable. His eyes burned with pure hatred. Then it is time to show them what happens when you provoke the Zorkan. He turned to his top assassin. A dark figure, clad in advanced cloaking armor, stepped forward. Find their leaders, Salvoran commanded. Find their weaknesses. His voice dropped to a deadly whisper. And burn them from the inside. The war escalates. Humanity had won another victory, but they had also pushed the Zorkan too far. And now, the Dominion was preparing something far worse than a simple invasion. Assassins, spies, biological weapons. The war was no longer just about fleets and firepower. Now, it was about survival. And Earth was about to face its darkest hour. The destruction of the Crucible had sent shockwaves across the galaxy. For the first time, the Zorkan Dominion was on the defensive. Their mighty fleets were crippled, their war plans delayed, and their reputation shattered. But humanity had made a fatal mistake. They thought the Zorkan would fight like soldiers. Instead, the Zorkan would fight like hunters. And their prey, Earth's leaders. The arrival of the infiltrators. In the depths of space, aboard the Dreadfang, a dark figure stepped forward. Drax Ven, master of shadows, a Zorkan assassin feared across the stars. He had ended entire civilizations without ever setting foot on a battlefield. And now he had only one mission: bring Earth to its knees. Standing before Supreme Warlord Salvoran, Drax Ven knelt. I will find them, he promised, and I will break them. Zalvoran's voice was cold. Make them suffer. Drax Ven simply vanished into the shadows. Earth's greatest threat walks among them. 2 weeks later, chaos erupted across Earth's major cities. The Prime Minister of Mars Colony was found dead in his quarters, his security systems completely bypassed. The chief of UEDC intelligence disappeared without a trace. A terror attack in New London left thousands dead, with no evidence of who was responsible. Fears spread like wildfire. Humanity had prepared for an invasion. They weren't prepared for an invisible enemy. The target, General Carter. Deep inside the UEDC command center, General Carter sat in his private office, reviewing war reports. The lights flickered. Something was wrong. Years of combat instincts screamed at him. Without hesitation, he grabbed his sidearm and spun around. A shadow moved. Too fast, too silent. A knife whistled through the air, aimed directly at Carter's throat. Crave. A single gunshot echoed in the room. The shadow staggered. Carter's eyes narrowed as the assassin collapsed, revealing his black armor and reptilian features. The general lowered his weapon. "I was wondering when you'd show up." Seconds later, soldiers burst into the room, weapons drawn. "Sir, are you all right?" Carter exhaled. "They're here," he muttered, "and they're just getting started." The counterattack. Task Force Phantom. Humanity had survived the first wave of assassinations, but at a cost. Earth's leaders were on high alert. Security had been doubled, but the fear remained. The Zorkan were inside their walls, and now they had one goal left: destroy the UEDC High Command before Earth could launch another attack. But humanity had one last ace to play. A team of elite operatives, handpicked for one mission only: hunt the hunters. This was Task Force Phantom, a team of cybernetically enhanced soldiers trained to fight in the shadows. Led by Commander Jason Kane, their orders were simple: find the Zorkan infiltrators and eliminate them. The final hunt begins. The battle for Earth was no longer fought in space. It was fought in the streets, the cities, the shadows. Task Force Phantom moved through the underbelly of Earth, tracking whispers of Zorkan movements. And then they found their target: a hidden Zorkan command cell, right in the heart of New Washington. It was time to end this. For good. The ambush. Task Force Phantom breached the hideout, moving with deadly precision. Silenced rifles took down guards before they could react. Kane kicked down a reinforced door, his team flooding in. Inside, Draxven himself stood, his glowing yellow eyes locking onto Kane's. For the first time, the master assassin had been caught. Draxven smiled. "You think you've won," he hissed. Kane raised his rifle. "We already have." Bang. One shot. Draxven fell. The Zorkan's greatest infiltrator was dead, and with him, the Dominion's last hope of crippling Earth from within. Humanity's warning. Hours later, a message was sent across the galaxy, a direct transmission to the Zorkan High Command. The face of General Carter appeared on their war screens. His voice was calm, cold, deadly. "You tried to break us from the inside. You failed." He leaned forward. "Now it's our turn." The screen cut to black. And at that moment, across the Dominion, the Zorkan realized the war was no longer about their invasion. It was about Earth's revenge. The Zorkan Dominion was no longer the unstoppable force it once claimed to be. Their greatest assassin was dead. Their supply chains were shattered. Their fleets were weakened. And now, humanity was coming for them. This was no longer a war of defense. This was revenge. The plan: Operation Ragnarok. Inside UEDC War Command, Earth's greatest minds gathered for one final plan. General Carter stood before a holographic display, his voice calm but firm. "We've crippled their fleets. We've taken out their infiltrators. But the Dominion still stands." He looked at his top commanders. "So now we end it." The target appeared on screen: Zorvok Prime, the heart of the Zorkan Empire. Their capital world, their fortress, their pride. For centuries, no enemy had ever dared to attack it. But humans were not like other enemies. Admiral Reynolds leaned forward. "How do we break through?" Dr. Vasquez smiled. "We don't. We go around." A new image flickered into view, a hidden wormhole near the Zorkan homeworld. A route they thought was a secret. Now it would become their doom. Carter nodded. "This is our moment." Operation Ragnarok had begun. The fleet moves. Hundreds of UEDC warships vanished into hyperspace. Their destination: right on top of the Zorkan's most protected world. Stealth destroyers moved ahead, jamming enemy communications. Dreadnoughts prepared their orbital cannons. Ground forces loaded into drop pods, ready to bring the fight directly to the Zorkan homeworld. This wasn't an invasion. This was execution. And when humanity arrived, the stars burned. The battle for Zorvok Prime. When the UEDC fleet emerged from the wormhole, the Zorkan were caught off guard. Alarms blared. Fleets scrambled. The Dominion's defenses had minutes to react. And minutes were all humanity needed. Railguns shredded enemy ships before they could form up. Fighter squadrons weaved through burning wreckage, hunting down the enemy's command ships. Orbital bombardments rained fire on the Zorkan capital city. From his warship, Admiral Reynolds gave the final order. All ground teams, deploy. Across the planet, drop pods screamed through the atmosphere, crashing into enemy strongholds. And leading the charge, Task Force Phantom, the fall of the Supreme Warlord. Inside the burning Zorkan palace, Supreme Warlord Salvoran stood on his balcony, watching his empire crumble. Fires raged. Explosions echoed. His people fled in terror. He had underestimated them. He had mocked them. And now, humanity had destroyed him. A voice interrupted his thoughts. "I thought you put up more of a fight." Salvoran turned, just in time to see General Carter stepping through the smoke, his rifle aimed directly at him. For the first time in his life, the Supreme Warlord felt fear. The final shot. Salvoran growled, "You think killing me will end this war?" Carter didn't blink. "This war ended the moment you targeted Earth." Salvoran roared and charged, his claws ready to tear Carter apart. Bang! A single shot. The warlord's body slumped to the ground. The reign of the Zorkan Dominion was over. Humanity's message to the galaxy. 1 week later, across every communication channel in the galaxy, a broadcast was sent. It showed the ruins of Zorvok Prime, the shattered fleet, the burning capital. And then, General Carter's face appeared. His voice was calm, cold, absolute. The Zorkan thought no one would challenge them. He paused. They were wrong. The broadcast ended. And across the stars, every empire, every warlord, and every conqueror understood one thing. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Epilogue. A new era. The war was over. But humanity had changed. They were no longer just fighters. They were now the strongest force in the galaxy, and if anyone dared to threaten them again, they would make the stars tremble. The end.